Hi there. In theology, divine providence is God's interaction with the world. The term divine providence is also used as a title of God. And divine providence is also a title of a book published by Emanuel Swedenborg in 1764, in which he describes a systematic theology regarding providence, free will, the existence and permission of evil, and related topics. Now, both meanings of providence are applicable in Swedenborg's theology, in that providence encompasses intent, purpose and action. Two of Emanuel Swedenborg's books act somewhat like a set. The first one, Divine Love and Wisdom, which deals in detail with the nature of the divine, and Divine Providence, which deals with the governing aspect or operation of the divine in creation. It is the detailed description of fundamental laws as described by Emanuel Swedenborg in the book Divine Providence that we will look at in this short series. Now, Swedenborg proposes 5 specific laws of divine providence which describe the operation behind the regeneration or reformation of our mind through rationality and freedom. Now, to learn more after watching this short series, you can read Swedenborg's book Divine Providence or start with another book written by Bruce Henderson called Why Does God Let It Happen? Now, thanks for joining me here, and I know that regardless of your personal spiritual path, you will find a lot of value in this short series. Now, while the language that I use is often Christ-centric, please try and look beyond and focus on a single divinity, looking after its creation with purpose, whether it be Yahweh, Jehovah, Allah, Brahma, Bayami, Lord, or, for me, Jesus Christ. Now let us commence with the first of these 5 laws. The first law tells us that God permits evil to exist, which I prefer to call selfishness, for the sake of our freedom, that we should be free to think for ourselves and behave in a manner we ourselves think is appropriate. It states, "It is a law of divine providence that we should act in freedom and in accord with reason." Now, to me it seems fundamentally obvious that unless we are in fact free, that we would be mere automatons, robots, string puppets. Without freedom, we would have no ability to exercise our own will, nor behave in a way that we would want. In fact, we would not even be able to contemplate, but would simply be, knowing nothing other than what is. Now that makes this the most important divine law to understand. It also is rudimentary to the other laws and the principle of it, and it is nowhere else explained as clearly as in Swedenborg's spiritual philosophy. Now let me offer a couple of quotes to highlight this. The first one from his book Divine Providence, where Swedenborg writes, "Rationality enables us to think on a higher level, and freedom enables us to think that way from desire, intentionally. If we did not have the freedom to think that way, that is, we would not have the intention and therefore would not have the thought. The result is that if we do not want to understand anything except what has to do with this world and its nature, if we do not want to understand what is good and true on moral and spiritual levels, we cannot rise from knowledge into intelligence, let alone from intelligence into wisdom, because we have blocked off these abilities." Now the second quote comes from a small book, but an absolute fantastic introduction to Swedenborg's entire theology, called The New Jerusalem and its Heavenly Doctrine, which is also published under titles as The Heavenly City or Introducing the New Jerusalem. The quote reads, "The seed that is sown in freedom lasts, but what is sown under compulsion does not, because compulsion is not in accordance with the person's will, but with the will of the one who compels." Now, freedom or free will cannot be separated from acting contrary to what is good and true, which is selfishness and commonly called evil. Swedenborg very clearly explains the origin of evil and our freedom in another book, Divine Love and Wisdom, and this quote too goes to support his primary law of providence. The origin of evil is the abuse of the abilities proper to us called rationality and freedom. By rationality I mean the ability to discern what is true and therefore what is false, and to discern what is good and therefore what is evil. By freedom I mean the ability to freely think and intend and to do such things. It may help to summarize the philosophy Swedenborg proposes by saying that we are protected under divine providence to be in a state receptive of both good and evil, and allowed to decide upon which to accept and own, and thereby affecting the quality of our character, to determine who we are and want to be. By deciding for ourselves which thoughts and affections to accept and act upon, we are able to shape our own character and life. Now, as I said already, if we were not able to make choices, we would not feel like autonomous beings, but more like marionettes, puppets controlled by a puppet master. That would in fact be no life worth living, if any life at all. Moreover, it is exactly this freedom that makes us distinctly human. Now, to elaborate and give a further insight into my understanding of how I believe things operate, I offer a rudimentary perspective in a diagram here. This diagram shows in essence that we are not our thoughts and feelings, but that these flow into us. We don't have conscious control of these. Swedenborg calls this influx. He describes that these flow into us from the spiritual realm. We can and must, however, reflect on these thoughts and feelings. Those trigger and affect our understanding and affections, but are also influenced by our understanding and our loves. It is here we decide which thoughts and affections we wish to hold on to and own, and which to reject. And finally, the thoughts and affections underpin our behavior, our deeds and words. And while it isn't directly necessary to externalize our thoughts and affections for them to shape our character, when we do, they certainly affect our character with each confirmation in word and deed. It is also at this most external level of life that we are able to be most readily reflect on a quality of our thoughts and affections. In other words, what we love. Now, as I said, freedom is fundamental because it places us in our own driver's seat. We should and must take full responsibility for our state of mind and thus our quality of character. We will learn that this freedom is very much protected by God because it goes to who we are. Swedenborg says that we are what we love. The Bible in Proverbs says the same thing, for as he thinks in his heart, so is he. Our rational mind is able to reflect on the thoughts and feelings flowing into us, and we are therefore consciously able to determine which to affirm and which to reject. By our own choices then, we change what we believe and what we love. And it is what we love that determines our character. In fact, it is our essential character. It becomes obvious then that we cannot instantaneously change our essential character and nature without at the same time destroying who we are. Let me repeat that. We cannot instantaneously change our essential character and nature without at the same time destroying who we are. We can only remain who we are, our sense of self, if we change ourselves voluntarily, which is a progressive and gradual process, and it cannot be instant. We cannot be transformed or renewed in a single moment. Now let us briefly turn to the Bible. That we have this freedom and choice is clear from experience, and of course the word in Luke chapter 6, where we read, "But why do you call me Lord, Lord, and do not do the things which I say? Whoever comes to me and hears my sayings and does them, I will show you whom he is like. He is like a man building a house, who dug deep and laid a foundation on the rock. And when a flood arose and the stream beat vehemently against that house, it could not shake it, for it was founded on the rock. But he who heard and did nothing is like the man who built a house on the earth without foundation, against which the stream beat vehemently, and immediately it fell, and the ruin of that house was great." Now God, being love itself, cannot dominate or control, but allows for freedom and others expressing their own will. Now, that doesn't mean that God is absent or not actively involved. In the contrary, through divine providence, God guides, protects, nurtures us through our freedom. This, of course, is no different to any parent seeing their children grow up and needing to allow them to make their own mistakes and learn about life by themselves. This is because the alternative, being sheltering our children from themselves and reality, would not allow them to learn the mental tools needed to become resilient, useful and dependable human beings, capable of having their own rational will or purposeful intent. It is for this reason that we're able to be free, that Swedenborg writes that regardless of a person's spiritual or philosophical beliefs, if they have their heart and their mind set to prioritize first and foremost what is good and true and apply what they believe to be so, they lead a life to and have a place in heaven. Because it is those who have the humility to accept reality as it is, a willingness to learn, and the will to apply the truth as they understand it, who are able to grow into eternity and are in a heavenly state of mind. In Apocalypse Explained we read, "Everyone who knows them and lives according to them," being the Ten Commandments, not merely from civil and moral law, but also from divine law, will be saved. And thus everyone in his own religion, whether Christian or Mohammedan or Gentile. And what is more, a man who from religion lives these truths, even if in the world he knows nothing about the Lord, meaning Jesus Christ, nor anything else from the Word, yet he is in such a state as to his spirit that he wishes to become wise. Consequently, after death, he is instructed by the angels and acknowledges the Lord and receives truths according to his affection and becomes an angel. And a little further on, in the next section, Swedenborg is more direct. In whatever religion a man may live, he can be saved. We also find it nicely summarized in our topic, Divine Providence, where he reveals, "Please listen though, no matter what religion people are born into, people can all be saved if they believe in God and live by the precepts of the Ten Commandments. Not to kill, not to commit adultery, not to steal, and not to commit perjury, because doing so would be contrary to their religion and therefore contrary to God." Jesus also clarified this when he told his disciples, "He who is not against us is for us." See Mark and Luke. Also in John chapter 14, verse 2 highlights this idea of liberty and God accommodating the many different ways of understanding the divine, being love and wisdom, or what is good and true. So you may wonder, why am I sharing these last few quotes? Well, I want to highlight that it is nonsensical to force others to become members of a particular religion or to act as a judge and say, "Only if you believe exactly as I can you please God. Be a good person, be enlightened, or go to heaven." We all must accept that the Lord guides each one individually on their own path and never breaks anybody's will. Who are we then to decide that things are so black and white, so finite? The only fundamentals are to believe in a divine creator and to live according to one's religion with the heart and intending of doing what is good and a humble willingness to learn what is true. Finally, I will add here to make it very, very clear that we cannot be reformed if rationality is absent. Freedom and rationality go hand in hand and cannot be separated. To change our nature, we must change freely and willingly. This, in turn, can only occur in a state where we understand our choices. We cannot have consent, being a decision of free will, without being informed and aware of which we consent to and choose. There is no choice without understanding the consequences or alternatives. So, for example, in states of fear, disease, insanity, or ignorance, such as when we're affected by drugs, having been forcibly manipulated or brainwashed, or under some kind of duress, When we aren't able to make informed, rational decisions, we are unable to effect any change to our nature. If we are not truly free, our choices have no effect on our character and our spiritual destiny. However, as long as we are of sound mind and body, we must be free to choose, even if what we choose is not what God wants for us. And to the extent possible, without removing our freedom, God protects and provides us with a spiritual balance between hellish influences and heavenly influences, so that we can choose either freely. This is referring to the influx we discussed earlier, the inflow of our thoughts and affections from the spiritual world. We read this promise in Arcana Celestia and Divine Providence. There is a sphere of endeavours to do evil from the hells, and a sphere of endeavours to do good from the heavens, between which there is equilibrium, so that man may be in freedom and can be reformed. We read that in Arcana Celestia. The Lord guards the freedom in a person as a person does the pupil of his eye, from Divine Providence. Now this leads us to the second law of Divine Providence, which we will of course discuss in the next session. Please don't forget to comment, like and share if you enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching, and please join me in the next episode.